Hi everyone, welcome back to the Play On Podcast Football Edition. In this part, me and Luke are going to talk about the Munster Football Championship. The first game we're going to talk about is Kerry against Clare. Kerry make a big statement of intent. They beat a very solid Division 2 team right out the gate. 3 goals and 22 points to 1 goal and 11. Very disappointing end to what could have been a fantastic year for Clare. They miss out on promotion to Division 1, which could genuinely be a possibility for them. And now they go out of the championship with an absolute hammering at the hands of what did look like a very, very promising Kerry team.
Yep, job done for Kerry, I suppose. Another kind of trend from the weekend was the big teams kind of put down early statements this year, kind of against teams that they were expected to beat, and they all did resoundingly. So, absolutely everything that kind of Kerry wanted from this game, I suppose. And they come through it like without a scratch on them, really.
Yeah, definitely. And the best play of the game that I've seen was definitely from Paddy Clifford. He intercepted a hand pass from a Clare defender, Conor Jordan. He had 1 second and he managed to ping an outside of the boot pass straight over all the Clare defenders into the hands of Sean O'Shea, who put it into the back of the net. That is one of the best passes that I think I've ever seen.
Yep, absolutely. And he's been some addition to that Kerry team, I suppose, as well. Like that you're talking about, kind of what they needed, something kind of a bit extra to be kind of competing with Dublin. And his combination with his brother David, I suppose, has been one of the big pluses so far this year for them. And it's yet another string to their bow. So you kind of look at some of the new fellas coming into this Kerry team. Like we look at kind of Mike Breen at right off back as well, that's come in. Like he's been really, really good too. So it's positive signs so far from Kerry. And but I suppose kind of hard to know, considering to where they're really at, I suppose, kind of considering that it wasn't the toughest test they're ever going to have this at the weekend, I suppose.
Yeah, definitely. Like there will be tougher days ahead. Peter Keane definitely did dress up the Tipperary game as if it's going to be a challenge for Kerry. He said, we're going to play against the reigning Munster champions. In other words, they're going to play against a team that, won the championship last year because Kerry were taken out of the way by Cork. And now it's a team that are going to be playing their football in Division 4 next year. Kerry are going to sweep them aside. They will win the Munster Championship this year, regardless of who they play, in my opinion. And the key test for them now is, can they beat Dublin? Obviously, everybody knows it's probably going to end up, they're on opposite sides of the draw. We probably will have a Dublin-Kerry All-Ireland final this year, barring, in my mind, a shock result. As good as Donegal and Mayo looked in their opening games, we'll get on to Mayo later. But for Kerry, it's all about, how do we beat Dublin? And interesting enough, they've seemed to have switched up their goalkeeper. Kieran Fitzgibbon, he's played all the league games. It was Shane Ryan last year, but now it's Kieran Fitzgibbon. And he had a bit of issues with his kickouts in this game.
Yeah, it's kind of he kind of has been trusted for the entire National League a bit. And I suppose this has been a position for Kerry where they have kind of struggled to kind of lay down like an absolute definite first choice. And Fitzgibbon, he's been back so far this year. And I know you've talked about the kickouts and stuff as well, but he had a very solid league campaign. So I think you just kind of put it down to first championship game nerves, I suppose. And then I'm sure he'll be backed anyway to kind of continue in goal. And I think he is the answer for them going forward this year. And look, the more games he plays, the more exposure he gets to it, the better he's going to become with this. So I wouldn't be too concerned about that, I suppose.
Yeah, definitely. And one thing that is clear is that Kerry do now have a very, established way of playing. They've got Darren Moynihan and Paul Ganey, which seem to be the workhorses in their team. Paddy Clifford kind of floats about, and they leave David Clifford most definitely inside. Sean O'Shea kind of floats in there as well sometimes. Stephen O'Brien was back playing. He's a huge player for them on his day. The interesting thing is that in the 2019 All-Ireland final, Jack Barry was put on Brian Fenton, and he seems to do a good job whenever he marks Brian Fenton. But yet in this game, they played Diarmuid O'Connor in midfield beside David Moran. I know you wouldn't look into it too much. It is the first game of championship. But in my mind, I think Kerry need to be picking a midfield partnership. if you now were in the Kerry camp and, probably thinking we are probably going to end up playing Dublin at some point this year, is it Diarmuid O'Connor or Jack Barry in midfield for you? Because as good as Diarmuid O'Connor is he going to do the same job on Brian Fenton that Jack Barry does?
Yeah, well, I think Jack Barry is one of the top. He's one of the top midfielders in the entire country. So I think I really do think you'll see Jack Barry in midfield later on in the year. So that's the thing, is that that leaves questions about whether does Diarmuid O'Connor get in. Like, I think Diarmuid O'Connor could play a wing forward role. I know we've talked kind of about the other options that Kerry have there, but I'd like to see kind of him out wing forward and with a midfield of David Moran and Jack Barry in midfield. So that's the way I'd kind of go about it. But it'll be interesting. I do think that maybe with the way Peter Keane's kind of setting up that it will be a straight choice between Jack Barry and Diarmuid O'Connor. So yeah, it's definitely one to look out for.
Yeah, definitely. And as for Clare, in my mind, this is a bit of a sad result for Clare, because I do think that, judging by how little success Clare seem to have had over the years in football, this crop of players, Gary Brennan, David Tubridy, it's a bit of a golden crop of players, and this result seems to be a bit of a sad one, because in my mind, they're definitely in decline now. The Malone brothers weren't playing. Aaron Fitzgerald has switched over to Hurl, and Gary Brennan's retired. David Tubridy's 36. How long till he goes realistically? It's definitely so much weaker of a team than it was a few years ago. Even though they did have the, spontaneous push for promotion. Colm Collins is now the longest serving manager in the GAA. It's going to be tough for him to find players of the calibre of the ones that he's lost. And yeah, I think Clare, they're starting to slip back down, in my opinion, and I think they'll find it tough to maintain the Division 2 status next year.
Yeah, well, they've kind of been overachieving a little bit for a while, kind of, and this year, was certainly that in the league anyway as well. I think they exceeded all expectation. I think a lot of people might have thought that they would have been favourites to go down in Division 2 at the start coming into this year. So, it's hard to know. I suppose it'll be it is a big ask from all the time trying to compete with the kind of the big dogs in Munster. But yeah, I think on the whole it has to be considered a positive year for Clare, and I suppose they were just unlucky that they have to draw Kerry in the first round. And yeah, they hoped they could have ended up on the other side of the draw maybe, and try and get a few kind of build a bit of momentum going into an inevitable kind of game against Kerry. But I think there is still plenty of positives to take. So
yeah, definitely, and I wish them the best, honestly, and rebuilding this team and keeping it at the level that they've had, and hopefully getting better, because I like the way that Colm Collins plays football. Players like Owen Cleary are just fantastic to watch, but they will find it hard to replace the likes of David Tubridy. He did score their goal after a nice move. It was too little too late. A David Clifford goal, kind of finish it off. And as well as that, Micheál Burns got himself a goal after coming off the bench late. Again, another positive for Kerry, their bench strength. Killian Spillane came on and scored 3 points. Micheál Burns, as I mentioned, he got himself a goal. Kerry's strength and depth now, it is growing. They didn't start Tyg Morley, they didn't start Tommy Walsh, they didn't start Jack Barry, they didn't start Adrian Spillane. To have these guys in reserve, it does show there's definitely strength and depth there for Kerry.
Yeah, completely. And the ideal start, I suppose. They answered kind of every kind of question, I suppose, put towards them going in. And they're absolutely not going to. The same thing isn't going to happen to them again. What happened in Munster last year in a summer championship. So every perfect start for Kerry, and what we expected from them. Yeah,
definitely. Elsewhere in Munster, Limerick played against Waterford, and they won the game by 4 goals and 18 points to 12 points. Limerick did just show the gap that has opened up between themselves and Waterford. Billy Lee did say that they're holding themselves to a higher standard now, and that's a huge plus for Limerick football. That they are looking at themselves and thinking we should sweep Waterford aside, and they did. Danny Neville, Hugh Burke in particular, Ian Corbett were all fantastic. Killian Fahy looked very good as well. So did Robbie Burke. Limerick are just, they're just that level above Waterford, and they showed it. Robbie Burke's first goal was inside 3 minutes after a good, powerful run by Killian Fahey. Danny Neville's powerful run and just caused problems for them all day. Set up a goal for Hugh Burke, who had an absolutely fantastic finish to it. Ian Corbett scored a penalty, and Killian Fahey scored the fourth goal. Interesting enough, in the post-match interview, the Waterford manager, Shane Ronayne, was very, very honest, surprisingly honest. He said that Waterford players aren't used to winning. And he said that, he went in at half time and he could visibly see that the heads were down and it's hard to know what to say to them. And yeah, that definitely is interesting, because I feel like everybody subconsciously knows that a county like Waterford in footballing terms, and they haven't won a Munster for so long, how can they manage to get out of that losing cycle? And to hear him being so honest about it, it was kind of sad to hear, to be honest.
Well, look, this is kind of the debate about championship reform, is that it must be very hard for Waterford to motivate players to even come out and kind of be involved in panels when they know what's ahead of them. Like, they knew this year coming in, no backdoor, no nothing. And like, even the likes of Limericks seem to be absolutely streaking ahead of them, and seem to be like a level above them as well. So it's yeah, look, it's not a great sign for Waterford football going on, and I think they'll probably rue the fact that they don't play more games in kind of a championship structure against teams that are more their level, and that they will have to come up against the big Munster teams kind of. And look, yeah, with the way kind of football's kind of gone there for a while, they don't go in expecting any kind of positive results from it. So yeah, look, it's just sums up like a lot of teams are probably a little bit lost in the way that the championship has been structured, especially with COVID.
Yeah, definitely. A positive for them was the performance of Dermot Ryan from wingback. He made it into the team of the week. He scored 3 first half points. He was fantastic. But apart from that, it was a bit of a bleak day for them. As for Limerick, fantastic performance, scoring 418. It was a brilliant score to rack up regardless of who you're playing. And now they go in against Cork. And I find this game fascinating, because Limerick are going into this game with nothing to lose. Cork have everything to lose. And, Limerick beat Tipperary. They should have beaten Tipperary in last year's All-Ireland Championship as well. And now they're going in against a Cork team, which Tipperary beat with relative ease in the Munster final last year. So if Tipperary can beat this Cork team, there's absolutely no reason why Limerick can't. And somehow Limerick are so underrated going into this game. And I think they're in a great place.
Yep, absolutely. I think they have come on like leaps and bounds in the last while. Like you look at the last few years, they've even last year against kind of Tipperary when they won the Munster Championship last year, Limerick were right in that game, barring like a late Conor Sweeney effort. And well, I think Limerick will be. They've, like, you can clearly see that in and around the same time that they kind of taken over the hurling, the football has been improving consistently year on year as well. So they've some excellent players we already talked about, like Ian Corbett, especially centre half back. So yeah, I think they will be. The tails will definitely be up going into that semi final now.
Yeah, definitely. I think it'll be fascinating to see. All right, so that is our review of the Munster football action which took place over the weekend. We will come back and we will talk about the Connacht Football Championship, the game between Mayo and Sligo.